In mezzo al rumore serve qualcosa che duri.
Il Papa Leon XIV.
Storie vere. Incontri che cambiano la vita. Persone che costruiscono. Uno sguardo originale su ciò che accade. Tutto questo è Tracce. Ora anche in una nuova versione digitale. Per raccontare sempre più storie di gente che vive. Tracce, la rivista internazionale di comunione e liberazione.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il programma Easy Token Collection, per accumulare punti da trasformare in premi. Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo.
Consorzio La Cascina. Ristorazione, global service, costruzioni, servizi alla persona. Promuoviamo l'impresa mutualistica e il benessere della comunità. I numeri di una grande realtà. Oltre 650 milioni di fatturato, più di 16.000 lavoratori. Vivenda. Ristorazione per mense scolastiche, ospedali, aziende e comunità. Global Service. La Cascina Costruzioni. Realizziamo come impresa o general contractor infrastrutture e grandi opere edilizie. Medi Hospes. Assistenza, accoglienza, cura. Da sempre al fianco dei più fragili. Consorzio La Cascina. Cuore da cooperativa, testa da impresa.
In mezzo al rumore serve qualcosa che duri.
Il Papa Leon XIV.
Storie vere. Incontri che cambiano la vita. Persone che costruiscono. Uno sguardo originale su ciò che accade. Tutto questo è Tracce. Ora anche in una nuova versione digitale. Per raccontare sempre più storie di gente che vive. Tracce, la rivista internazionale di comunione e liberazione.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il programma Easy Token Collection, per accumulare punti da trasformare in premi. Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo.
Consorzio La Cascina. Ristorazione, global service, costruzioni, servizi alla persona. Promuoviamo l'impresa mutualistica e il benessere della comunità. I numeri di una grande realtà. Oltre 650 milioni di fatturato, più di 16.000 lavoratori. Vivenda. Ristorazione per mense scolastiche, ospedali, aziende e comunità. Global Service. La Cascina Costruzioni. Realizziamo come impresa o general contractor infrastrutture e grandi opere edilizie. Medi Hospes. Assistenza, accoglienza, cura. Da sempre al fianco dei più fragili. Consorzio La Cascina. Cuore da cooperativa, testa da impresa.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo
Proporre con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.
Buon pomeriggio.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I'm Matteo Lessi. I work in the editorial cultural board of the meeting, and I have the honor of moderating this session. It's not easy to address the topic of today's session, a burning life, Christianity, the attraction of witnesses, after the intense emotions that we experienced yesterday. Thanks to our guest speakers, we have this opportunity now. I will start introducing them. Father Luciano Luppi, Professor of Spiritual Theology and Curator of the exhibition on Madeleine Delbrêl. Please give him a round of applause. Thank you for being here with us.
Cardinal.
The Cardinal also reminds me to say that he is a priest of the Diocese of Bologna. Of course, it is important to maintain parochialism, isn't it? And then Gerolamo Fazzini, journalist, is also curator of the exhibition on Madeleine Delbrêl. Welcome.
Poi è con noi
And then we have Sister Kristen Gardner of the Sister Servants of the Home of the Mother.
insieme
Along with many other sisters of her who are here in the room, and she is also the postulator of the beatification of Sister Clare Crockett. There is an exhibition about her at the meeting too. And then, to my right, His Eminence Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, President of the Bishops' Conference and Archbishop of Bologna. We want to thank him so much because he's really working so much in the meeting today. Let me introduce today's session, starting with a provocation that Eugene Ionesco put forward right here at the meeting many years ago. During a press conference, he was asked about what prompted him to write an opera libretto about Maximilian Kolbe, and he replied that he felt a duty to remind the world without fail that charity endures regardless, that holiness and the spirit of sacrifice continue to exist. And UNESCO was taking issue with a society that makes room only for trivial matters, and today some calls it the society of mass destruction, forgetting that a world without saints is a cruelly desperate world. So today let's try to take this challenge seriously, for holiness appears, it unsettles, and as we will see from our guests' stories, it is for everyone, even if only for what one brings into the world as a testimony. And our time needs so much burning lives, as our Holy Father reminded us yesterday at the meeting, at a time when the most human questions are reactivated and a strong desire of a sense for justice and peace. Thus we shall explore the life of two women. First, Madeleine, the mystic of the Parisian working-class suburbs, and then Sister Clare Crockett, the Irish girl who left her Hollywood dreams behind for a radical mission that took her all the way to Ecuador. Let's start with Madeleine to explore this figure. I refer to her by their first name because these past 2 months studying them made me friend to them. So let's start with Father Luciano Luppi. They sound as if they are lives that belong to other eras, but Madeleine is so current, so they are able to answer the questions that we're posing today. This woman was a writer, poet, a social assistant, a faithful woman, and she decided to experience her faith in the most difficult place, that is everyday life. Luciano, you met Madeleine and you fell in love with her writings, and the exhibition is really an explosion of provocation and comfort for people. So please take us into the journey to know more about this woman. Thank you. In a few minutes, it's not easy to say enough about it, but I hope to trigger interest in visiting the exhibition. I'll begin with a personal note. My first encounter with Madeleine Delbrêl dates back to 1982. Madeleine had died just 18 years earlier. I was struck by the depth and beauty of her writings, which conveyed the joy of believing. As I sought to get to know her better, coming as I did from Bologna, which in those years was a testing ground for Italian communism, I was intrigued by her ability to reconcile Christian integrity with fraternal and collaborative friendship among the many activists in that stronghold of French communism that was at the doors of Paris, Ivry-sur-Seine, where Madeleine lived for over 30 years, from 1933 to 1964. Her story is truly unique. Having converted around the age of 20 in 1924, after an early youth in which she proclaimed, "God is dead, long live death," she lived her entire life consumed by a passion for proclaiming the gospel to non-believers. She wrote, "Once we have come to know the word of God, we have no right to keep it to ourselves. From that moment on, we belong to those who await it." Endowed with a lively temperament and an artistic background, so much so that she won a national prize for young poets exactly 100 years ago, in the summer of 1926 in July, Delbrêl agreed to devote 6 years to the fledgling French scouting movement, quickly rising from assistant pack leader of the Cub Scouts to head of training for Girl Scout leaders in the city of Paris. Accustomed from a very young age to frequenting Parisian cultural circles and attending lectures on history, philosophy, literature, and art at the Sorbonne, she chose at the age of 27 to study nursing and social work in order to immerse herself with professional expertise in the poverty of the city's working-class suburbs, where she worked as a social worker for a full 12 years. Living in a world where she was aware that, and she was saying this by joke, it is not so easy to navigate successfully when you are a woman, both in society and in the church, she found herself on several occasions recognized as a leading figure in the civic and political spheres of her city, and was even urged by high-ranking church officials to write in order to share her experience with everyone. It is no surprise then that her personality and her writings have attracted the attention of great historians and theologians, and that her texts are increasingly being translated into various languages. And Pope Francis, on the 26th of January 2018, declared her venerable. That is, he solemnly recognized that she lived all the Christian virtues to a heroic degree. That day, 26th of January 2018, I found myself laughing because I was thinking about Madeleine Delbrêl, that could not help but smile from heaven upon hearing this heroic designation attributed to her. She who lived her entire life as a state testament to the possibility of holiness for everyone, for the ordinary people on the streets. And she wrote, "Perhaps we might take pleasure to achieve a sensational humility or unbeatable poverty, or to unshakable obedience, or to an impeccable chastity. But if this humility, this poverty, this chastity, this obedience have not led us to encounter goodness, we may be heroes, but we will not be among those who love God. This emphasis on daily life and on the most ordinary aspects of life as a test of Christian authenticity should not be mistaken for a minimalist view of Christian life itself. On the contrary, for Delbrêl, one should, and here she quotes Charles de Foucault, one should live today as if I were to die a martyr tonight, unequivocally underscoring the radical nature of a truly evangelical existence. For her, however, it was always a matter, and here we see her subtle humor, a matter of the call to the passion of patience, a martyrdom just for God's glory, but without our glory. She was not afraid to openly propose this evangelical radicalism. To a young friend who was searching and confiding in her, she wrote, "My dear, stop playing hide and seek with God in your life, because He's already there. Whether you recognize Him or not, it's a fact." And above all, she used to say, if God is God, He cannot but ask everything. He's God. He wants to give everything. But remember that the first subject to be jealous of your freedom is you, because He wants you to build everything. But you have to get rid of something, to free yourself of something. Of what? Thinking that your happiness, your fulfillment coincide with the idea that you have conceived of it. But it's not like that. God wants to build your happiness and the fulfillment of your life in freedom, in liberty, with everything that He has done by inventing you, all the people that have done you, and all the desires that you bring in your heart. This joyful radicalism, because she would say that no, God cannot ask either everything or nothing, todo y nada, but within the liberty. So this radicalism can only be understood in light of her conversion around the age of 20, what she calls her dazzling encounter with God on the 29th of March 1924. It was very important for her, meeting people like her, young people, believers, that would live faith with such a naturalness that she felt compelled to question her staunch agnosticism. So she started asking herself, what if God exists? The similarity to what has been happening in France in recent years is striking, with so many young people asking to become Christians and affirming that the spark was ignited in them by the encounter with young Christian friends. If at the age of 17 Madeleine wrote, echoing Nietzsche's statement, God is dead, long live death, her encounter with God led her to discover the beauty of life and His presence in all things. She herself, with her proverbial sense of humor, promised to repeat this invocation several times a day. My God, if you are everywhere, why am I so often elsewhere? For her, the most ordinary circumstances are just as many springboards to ecstasy, just as many bridges to cross, from our little projects to the big design of God. For Madeleine, Jesus Christ is supremely free. The time she encountered Him in faith, she felt the fragrance of Christ, and thus she was gaining the freedom through Christ, and taken with Him, she cannot but live in the love of the one that created her. And so she feels that also the other has the right to life transformed with the Word of God. That love that moves the sun and the other stars, if you met her, it really compels you to live through that. for your life. And Madeleine is aware that while faith impels one to reach out to everyone as the most tender of brothers would, this very love which demands fraternal solidarity, when lived in contemporary settings where so many do not believe in God and do not even seem to miss Him, that love often brings about a profound sense of disorientation and often a painful loneliness. For this reason, she lucidly states, "Woe to me if I do not evangelize, but woe to me also if I evangelizing does not evangelize me." In other words, the current situation of living alongside so many non-believers or those who are religiously indifferent is not entirely negative, but rather a providential opportunity to free ourselves from viewing faith as something taken for granted, to rediscover its essence, and to recognize it anew as a free and unprecedented gift. The luck of believing. These inevitable moments of disorientation, she says, are necessary, because they are helpful to peel away the layers of the onion. Of course, we cry when we peel onions, but this is the only way to taste the pulp of faith and to live it with renewed vitality. One of the most beautiful works of hers, The Dance of Obedience, which might be even called one of the most beautiful works of 20th century spiritual literature, is centered on the image of dance. From a young age, Madeleine loved to dance. The choice of dance as a symbol is highly significant because when you think about it, if, as the great French choreographer Maurice Béjart asserted, dance is the only work of art in which the artist and the work of art coincide. It is indeed the most fitting image to express holiness. You are the masterpiece of God. You are its work of art. And it explains the capacity of saints to attract and to fascinate. Their lives undoubtedly compel us to reflect and mysteriously attract even those for whom they remain indecipherable, because not believing, they do not hear the music that moves the saints from within. But those who do not believe, even if they don't hear the music, they suspect that it is there, because they have the intuition that it's not someone who's just playing mechanically or making random gestures. A life of faith danced in the search of God's love is a humble yet captivating invitation. An invitation to seek out this music and to enter into the dance with one's whole being, as was the case with Madeleine, who invites us to pray, "Lord, let us live our lives not as a game of chess where everything is calculated, not as a race where everything is difficult, not as a problem that feels like a brain teaser, not like a debt to be paid, but as a celebration, like a dance in the arms of your grace, to the universal music of love. Lord, invite us to dance." And what is the dance floor? It is everyday life, the people in the street. There are people that Lorraine takes and puts them aside, and others that they are in the mass. They are people that do an ordinary job, they have an ordinary family, and they live an ordinary life that are not married. People that have ordinary illnesses, ordinary losses, ordinary house, ordinary clothes. People of ordinary life. People that you can meet in the street, any street. And whenever they open their door as invisible brothers in the street, they love the door. It's just like the door that was closed behind them. We in the street believe with all our strength that this street, this world where God has put us, is for them the place of our sanctity. God is giving you a meeting place there. That's where you can meet God, and you can let everybody meet God. So enjoy the dance of faith.
Thank you. Thank you, Don Luciano, for introducing us to the profound and the various facets of the figure of Madeleine and her spirituality. Gerolamo Fazzini, what can we add to this figure to know her better? Good afternoon to you all. I would like to start from an advertising slogan maybe some of you remember. it said, "Those who love burn." This was a slogan of several decades ago. I would like to add some reflections. I would like to add some reflections on this word, the image of the flame, because Madeleine Delbrêl and Sister Clare Crockett are examples of lives burnt for and with Christ. They are concrete examples of this burning for God. Although they lived in two very different temporal and geographical contexts, Madeleine was a missionary without the boat in the de-Christianized France. There was a missionary outside Europe later on, and Sister Clare, she left Europe to go to Ecuador as a missionary. Two different contexts, but they have something in common, that the fact of burning in the terms in which Madeleine taught, a gospel that is kept safe but not proclaimed. Is it possible for this kind of gospel to be a fire that burns? I would like to start from here. I would like to focus on the image of the flame, which leads me to four elements. A flame illuminates, and mentioning Madeleine, quoting Madeleine, starting from prayer. Prayer permeates and fills every hour. It arises from every encounter like fire from wood. And this is a fire, for Madeleine, that illuminates, pointing a direction in encounter with reality, people, situations, circumstances of everyday life. The flame of the gospel gives a meaning to the believer's journey and guides them. It gives you a direction. Madeleine speaks a lot about roads, paths. You will find all this in the exhibition. The catalog is wider than the exhibition, and the road is a leitmotif. This going, this displacing would be something generic. It would be wandering with no direction if we didn't have a precise destination. So the faith gives you this destination, and Madeleine says it, especially after her encounter. She defined a dazzling encounter in 1924 with God. There's a book by Eric Emmanuel Schmidt titled Night of Fire. This is a diary, this very important French writer, telling about his own experience, which might have been tragic in the Sahara Desert. He had to write a screenplay on Charles de Foucault. At a certain point, he found himself lost in the Sahara Desert. It could have been the beginning of a tragedy, but for him, on the contrary, it was an opportunity in which what cannot be thought about is an opportunity to meet the mystery to Schmidt. That was a moment in which he lived a real spiritual epiphany, a decisive encounter. I would like to add one last element vis-à-vis what Madeleine said. Today, there's a strong desire to move, to go somewhere. But the question is, do we have a destination, or are we just wandering? Madeleine invites us to have a fixed look on the destination. Otherwise, one may run the risk of losing direction. The second thing that a flame does is that it warms up. So a flame that heats is described in this way by Madeleine. There are moments in which crouching, this is the quotation, crouching in front of the stove, you wait for the flame to catch from the small piece of wood before you add the coal. It's a very simple image, which evokes everyday life. And this everyday life is found very often in Madeleine's texts. The needles, the telephone, the notes, the agenda, the underground ticket, the newspapers. So this tells us that the flame of faith warms every part of your everyday life. every corner of your reality. It reaches everything that makes up your daily existence, and it gives warmth to everything. And I would like to underline this word, everything. If this were not the case, and I speak for myself, I would have no interest in the God or in Jesus Christ. There's another very beautiful passage where Madeleine said, every small action is an immense event, where the heavens is given to us, and where we can give heavens, regardless of what we do. Either use a broom or a needle, either taking care of a sick person or using a writing machine. Everything is a part of the splendid reality of our meeting God, and the soul meeting God, and the soul getting new at every instant. The third aspect, the flame burns, and I would like to make another quotation, which is perfectly fit for this summer. Madeleine says, "I love this merciless summer in which the sun seems to want to destroy everything that is not itself, yet still ripen the fruits. It burns only the flowers, for their time has passed. It is a time of fruitfulness and not of promises." So to Madeleine, the sun, like faith, is something that consumes what is of little value or worthless, so that what is destined to last may ripen. Faith is an energy, as Madeleine seems to say, by virtue of which we are able to purify ourselves of the non-essential, to continually redefine our priorities. The fruitfulness she mentions is linked to definitive choices, to ultimate choices, promises that have taken concrete form day by day in being truth to one's own vocation. So the appeal is that of bearing fruit. This does not mean producing results at any cost or chasing worldly success. The opposite is true. Being able of Christ's appeal, by their fruits you should recognize them. The flame, fourth element, faith and flame, is contagious. Madeleine continues by saying, "Don't let some sparks from that lesson in happiness, that fire of joy which you kindled one day on the mountain, touch us." Please note the verbs. Some sparks should touch us, bite us, overwhelm us, invade us. Note the verbs used. Grant that penetrated by them like sparks in dry stubble, we may walk the streets of the city. Here, I think that through the witness of the Church, of the saints on the altar, and of the many anonymous saints of yesterday and today, we have been touched by at least one spark of that fire of joy, of a testimony which changed our heart, something which to us has become catch fire, being contaminated, and then you catch fire. At that point, the mission arises. And Madeleine was a missionary as an irrepressible need. It imposes itself with an inescapable urgency. I think about one of my friends, Father Piero Mazzolo, a missionary who collaborated with the New York Encounter on the exhibition about the martyrs of Algeria last year. Father Piero is now in the United States. He lived in Nigeria and in Myanmar. He has quite a peculiar kind of story, reminding us of that of Madeleine. He came from a wealthy family. In Milan, he had everything. He was studying architecture, and he was to have a very easy kind of career. He spent a summer in India, and he decided to abandon his studies and let himself be contaminated by the flame. He became a missionary. And the fundamental condition to conclude for being a missionary, as Madeleine says, is that for us the gospel is a lesson in happiness, a precious secret to be shared, a treasure to be communicated together, not just as solitary solitary people. As Father Luciano wrote, together with her companions on Rue Raspail, Madeleine had put forward the proposal to set up a small groups for reading the gospel, hubs of a simple life, contagious and fraternal charity. So the flame transforms and transforms itself. Madeleine was a flame and was transformed, as she herself recounts, by those around her. The atheist environment, as you said, changed her. And I quote, "The atheist environment, by its very pressure, is a constant challenge to the purification of our faith. It forces us to ask ourselves not so much what our religious opinions are, but on whom and essentially on what our life is founded." Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gerolamo, for completing the picture on Madeleine. I would like to follow up on this last sentence of you, on whom and on what our life is essentially founded. This was also the discovery at a certain point of Sister Clare. From France in the first half of the 1900s, we move on to Ireland in the late 1900s and early 2000s. Imagine a young woman who dreamt to become an actress, the most famous actress in the world. But at the same time, she feels a void. She described, "I felt that nothing that I could have could fill my life. No success, no fame, no human love. Everything seemed to be limited, and I desired something more." On Good Friday, I understood that nothing could fill my heart like the presence of Christ, and she felt the appeal of Christ. So she moves from the desire to become the most famous actress in the world. As she said, she passed on to become the most famous nun in the world. She was a missionary. She went to Ecuador, and then she died tragically due to an earthquake. So her life would touch many young people, many girls and boys, and she would light lots of believers. Sister Kristen, if you want to tell us a little bit more about Clare, you knew Clare. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm here this afternoon to talk about Sister Clare. And as a novice in Rome, St. Clare wrote this quote from Catherine of Siena in her booklet. And she says, "You are a fire that is always burning. You consume and are not consumed. With your fire, you consume every traces of soul in the light." The perfect expression of the fire that the young Clare found on a Friday of the year 2000, a fire of love that inflamed her heart and then led her to help Christ inflame the whole world, especially the hearts of young people. Clare was a typical youth of today's world. She longed for happiness, and she looked for that happiness where the world seems to offer it: fame, money, pleasure. She dreamed of reaching Hollywood, and she wanted to become a famous actress. However, the emptiness that all that world has to offer led her to drink to forget her problems. Her soul was cold without the heat of God's fire and dark without the light of God's fire. And yet, she had a desire for greatness in the depth of her heart. She knew she was made for something greater. There is a Latin expression that says ad maiora nati sumus, that was fundamental for her life even afterwards. And she was well aware that she had been created for something greater, and God broke into her life when she least expected it at the age of 17. She was invited on a free trip to Spain, and when she heard the word Spain, as a typical Irish person, thought about sunny beaches and boys, but it was not a tourist trip, it was a pilgrimage. And she soon found herself in a 16th century monastery, living the Paschal Triduum, much to her dismay. On Good Friday, she sat at the back of the church, and she got into the line to venerate the cross like everybody else. And it's here where the fire of God's love touched her heart unexpectedly. She started crying, and she could only say, "Love God's me, and He died for me." And she would repeat that all over again, over and over again. That first light that God posed in her soul started burning, but it took a year to abandon or the old habits and the friends and her old sins and getting drunk and impurity and vanity. These all tried to extinguish that fire, but God waited with patience and tried to enter her life in different moments. Eventually, in 2001, the heart of the young Clare was fully burning, and she decided to leave everything that she was having in this world and to choose choice as the only love for her life. She went back to Spain again to enter the Sisters of the Home of the Mother. And that's a time when I entered too. So we started our as a novice for many years. Then she moved to the United States and to Ecuador, and I remained in Spain, and then I moved to Italy. I wanted to share with you some experts from her life, with some concrete examples that I think can be beautiful. Sister Clare always hated getting up early in the morning. It was a big sacrifice. And during the last year of her life in 2015, she was at Playa Prieta in Ecuador in our community. And because of the lessons and the time of the lessons, they were forced to get up at 5 a.m. And she would accept that normally. However, on the weekend, she always hoped that she could get up a little later, and they would do that sometimes, but one Saturday in May, they got up at 5 a.m. as usual. And afterwards, she wrote that she got up very, very angry. It was one of those moments when it's impossible to change one's feelings. You're just angry, period. And Sister Clare wanted at least to offer God her sacrifice of love and at least a desire to change her feelings, even if she couldn't change them. And during the prayer in that morning, she asked God for the grace of real conversion, and she picked up a book. And that's when she read that Latin saying, ad maiora nati sumus, we were born for greater things. And she wrote, it's a phrase that the first Christians would say when they wanted to cast away with a magnanimous expression, something that seemed mediocre, vulgar, or petty. I was born for greater things. Why has this helped me so much? Because in prayer I understood that everything that I do, especially getting up at 5 in the morning, has to become a sacrifice of praise. I have to elevate this act that is so hard for me into something great. God asks me for this sacrifice because He will do something great with it. I finished prayer with this certainty, ad maiora natus sum. This is a fundamental idea in Sister Clare's own personal fight for holiness, and in my view, today this is the special mission that she wants to transmit to all of us. We are not born to live mediocrely, but for greater things, for holiness, to be a sacrifice of praise to the glory of God. Why do we complain when something goes wrong? Why do we complain when we have a headache, These are occasions that we miss to do great things before God. Every single second is a battle. Either we love God in that instant, or we prefer ourselves, our command, our comfort, our pleasure, our likes, so many things that we place before God. And there's another story that's really nice, and it shows how she would deliver her love for God to the others. In November 2010, so 5 years earlier, she went to Valencia in Spain to work as assistant to the chaplains in the hospital. And there she met Paco, this man that was in the end stage of his AIDS condition. He was 40 years old. He was quite silent and stubborn. When he would say something, it was almost always a no. So in the first occasions where she met him, she was the only one that would do the talking, as if she had known him for all her life. And she was telling her stories about her family, when she was a kid, about her parents. And she tried to make him smile a little bit. So one day she asked him, "What are you learning from sisters?" And he said, "I'm learning to laugh, to smile." He couldn't walk, he couldn't sit or move by himself. He could hardly use his hands, and often Claire would offer him a glass of water or a sweet, and with no worries of getting in touch with him physically, and he was moved about. And she would ask, "Do you believe in God, Paco? Do you know how much he loves him? He loves you?" And after a few months, after 24 years, he got confession, and he got the onions of the ill, and he was full of light, and he wanted to get the communion. And then every day she would bring him the communion. And she would ask, "What do you want us to bring?" And he would say, "The guitar." And then a year later she would ask, "What do you want us to bring you?" And he would say, "Liberty." And after confession and communion, he would say, "Your presence and communion." God's love was so alive in her that it was contagious, and she could transmit it. She could deliver this fire to the others. And to conclude, after the earthquake and the death of Sister Clare, we had the opportunity to interview a missionary from Communion and Liberation, Father Francesco Rizzo, who is now in Bangladesh, if I'm not wrong. And the sister of Playa Preta, when Sister Clare was there, would often go there to get confession. And he had a great desire for perfection. She was not really seeking perfection and sanctity, confiding in her forces on the spiritual belief, but her conviction was love, nothing else. She was really looking for a transformation, and she didn't want to have any shadow, any barrier that would impede the Lord to act through her and in her. The title of exhibition dedicated to Sister Clare in this meeting is Sister Clare Crockett, Happiness is an Undivided Heart. At the beginning of my presentation, I cited Catherine of Siena. "You are a fire that is still burning. You consume, you're not consumed. With your fire, you consume every trace of ounce love in the soul, and the fire of God's love eliminates every disordered love in our heart." And that gives us an undivided heart that loves God with every throb, with every breath, and from God's heart himself can love every single creature.
Vuole finire?
Ho una cosa da dire.
I still have one more thing to say. We do not know what Sister Clare's last words were, if she expressed this total transformation into love in her last moments. However, we do know one of the last songs she was singing when the earthquake occurred, because she was playing the guitar with some other girls, and the song title was I Prefer Paradise. And if one dies preferring paradise, the eternal presence of God, I think we can say that one dies of love. Don't you think so? So now, after her death, we are seeing how God is permitting this fire of love to set fire to many other people around the world. I hope this afternoon your own heart will be caught fire slightly, and that you also desire to love God with an undivided heart, that you desire not to live mediocrely, but to live ad majora, for the greater things, to be a sacrifice of praise for the glory of God. Thank you.
No. Grazie. Grazie, Sur.
Thank you, Sister Kristen, for what you told us. So I believe that Sister Clare is also laughing along with Madeleine. Your Eminence, it falls to you. I wouldn't want to be in your shoes, but luckily I'm not. But we wonder. It falls to you to help us understand these two flames. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you very much for having me. I'm always admired of the fact that at 3 p.m. there are so many people willing to listen to us. I cannot take this for granted. I'm always very pleased to see that there are so many people willing to listen to us, and I think that this is already an answer what burns and what is really of interest to us. I can say that we can see it very well. I would like to make some remarks. I've just known Sister Clare. The first remark refers to holiness. Holiness to many of us who are of a certain age means deprivation. Holiness meant not doing things or bearing sufferings or negative things that happened in your life, something which required a lot of efforts to us, as if the beautiful things in life or the pleasant things in life were somewhere else. So holiness was always and only identified with negative things. But I have to say that listening to these three descriptions made by people who are really in love with those figures, and this is very evident, I would say that if there is an aspect of holiness, it's linked with passion. We made holiness something linked with heroes, with something heroic, belonging to an elite, so that those who did not belong to the elite could do whatever they wanted. Holiness is joyful. It is attractive. Holiness makes you discover things. Holiness is free. In these descriptions, we found a great degree of liberty. Unfortunately, I always wake up and get up very early. When I was younger, I was like Sister Clare. I didn't want to get up early, but getting older, I started to get up very, very early. I want to find what I was made for. So not making what I'm asked while I'm somewhere else. Someone said, well, the Lord, God will never ask you why you were not Elijah or why you were not Ezekiel. God will ask you, why were you not yourself? And this makes a lot of difference. One of the most beautiful documents by Pope Francis which is straightforward and which is demanding when it comes to love. And I repeat it, I'm not referring to negative aspects. When I say it's challenging and demanding, it's the Cartelle Exultate, a document on holiness. One of the most famous aspects are the saints of our everyday life. The saints we may know, who may live close to us. Pope Francis often talked about the holy people, the saints of living next door. I, too, may be the saint living next door. The second remark is that holiness never gets old. And it is a fire that is widespread. It is conveyed, it is transmitted. It means beauty, warming and lighting another beauty. St. Francis of Assisi is a good example of someone being able to communicate and to help many people living the gospel joyfully. So I would say that we do need saints. In a world in which, well, if you remember about the story of the heroes, someone says that if a community needs heroes, it means that the community is not faring very well. We need heroes, but I mean we need saints communicating the gospel. All of these examples are of joyful people. The saints are always joyful because the saints, all the saints, were so happy because they had discovered God. So none of them was ever sad. And then I would also like to add another remark. Well, holiness is one aspect. And the second aspect is that in both of these women, we find a very social and concrete kind of holiness. I know Madeleine Delbrêl a little bit more. That's a mystic figure in mystic elements in the social aspects, in the society. It may seem a paradox. We have spirituality on the one hand, on one side, and then we have society on the other side. Whereas it is not possible to have holiness without society. The church will never become an NGO because the church is love. The church is totally different from any NGOs. The church will never function if it becomes an NGO, because it means that the church will not focus on the gospel any longer. Passion is not something abstract. This is the core. Gospel is not in sacristies. It is not in incense. The signs are important. Of course, they are important. But if I do not meet holiness and in my everyday life, it stinks. Or it may be reduced to a sort of spiritual or confectionery, so to say. This is from Father Mien, one of the last people killed by the KGB. Beware of spirituality considered as a spiritual confectionery, so to say, the one nourishing the ego. We need to nourish our ego, and so we can reduce God to someone who is there to make you feel well. It improves your life. God improves your life only if you are willing to make other people's lives better. So God will never close your soul. God wants you to be open to society. We are not talking about a physician placing man at the center. It is the other person that should be discovered. It is the joy of loving and of dying because of love. Martyrs have loved. They have loved until the end. Of course they were afraid. Of course they were afraid. Jesus certainly had fears. But they loved more than they were afraid. They decided to love more than and to overcome their fears. They loved others more than they loved themselves. So this is what love is about. It is something more. And this was a second remark. And then I have a third remark referring to a social aspect. And then I will read something on the lay liturgy. What strikes about Madeleine Delbrêl is that she went to speak to the communist strongholds, and we're talking about 80 years ago, and she understood that no one would let her know the gospel, and she decided to keep her eyes open, discovering the presence of God even there, even amongst the communist communities. Maybe another person would have gone wearing a helmet or with some sort of weapon, or in order to win some sort of enemy. She went to these communities with her eyes open, and she decided, well, if you remember, Pope Francis said one should contemplate the city. And I always thought about Madeleine Delbrêl because she contemplated the city. She did not see what was not there. One might have said, those are enemies, so you should not approach them. You should not never go to a communist stronghold. And the communists back then were someone to be afraid of, but she was not afraid of them because she was able to go beyond the first impression, because she loved in the end, because she was able to see what is profound. I still have 9 minutes, but I will not speak for 9 minutes. So she described a bar which was called Chiaro di Luna, moonlight. I would like to read this passage because if everyone learns to have this kind of gaze towards the everyday life, we should all be disarmed. Those who are the mystics are those looking with the eyes of God, those who look with a gaze full of love, not those looking at a world which is outside the real world. They look within the real world, and they manage to grasp what is hidden. They do not invent anything. And all of us should have the same kind of gaze. To me, it is Jesus' eyes when he saw the tired crowds. Compassion. And compassion is not having a gaze which includes prejudices. It means understanding the other people's suffering. So the spiritual confectionery means I'm suffering and God needs to take care of me. Otherwise, if he does not take care of me the way I want, I would choose someone else. This is the spiritual confectionery. Whereas, as Pope Leo said yesterday, you need to go out of yourself in order to get back to yourself. And I would like to read something in this respect. We should have this kind of gaze, and we should go where we would never go. And I'm referring to the peripheries. This is what Pope Francis said. And Pope Leo, not by chance, had many decades of life outside the customary experiences. So he lived in a very different way. You led us tonight in this bar called Moonlight. You wanted to be there within us for a few hours tonight. You wanted to meet through our humble forms, through our short-sighted gaze, through our hearts that do not know how to love. All these people who have come to while away the time. And so the bar is no longer a profane kind of place, that corner of the world that seemed to turn its back on you. We know that through you we have become the things of flesh, the hinge of grace which compels it to turn upon itself, to orient itself in spite of itself and in the dead of night towards the Father of all life. In us the sacrament of your love is realized. We bind ourselves to you with all the strength of our score faith. We bind ourselves to them with the strength of his heart that beats for you. We love you, we love them, so that we may all become one. So we are the hinge, uniting the bar called Moonlight, those who while away the night drinking, and then the highest thing possible, God's love. Just a couple of final remarks. And Father Luciano partly read. Well, Pope Francis mentioned Madeleine Delbrêl at the end of the two extraordinary synods on synodality. I was struck by Father Luciano. He's passionate about Madeleine Delbrêl. He was very happy with Pope Francis' quotations. Why did he mention dancing? Because that's a sin of rigidity. The sin of rigidity is linked to safety, to security, such as judgments. We are not asked to judge, we are asked to love. Rigidity means defending one's own identity, while it makes the identity go far away from us. So the quotation by Madeleine Delbrêl of dance is wonderful. I've never danced in my life, just once during a party of my class, but my dancing was not so successful, I have to admit it. However, Madeleine said about dance that it means you should abandon yourself to grace. You should decide to be led by someone else, not with your own strengths, but letting us be led by the strength, which is the strongest element in the world, namely the strength of love. And then the last remark is refers to big things. She's right. One need to do big things. Love is all but mediocre. Love defeats mediocre actions. Wanting to be a protagonist, always wanted to be performing. This is what spoils the world. When we believe that we are so important, I always think that we are very ridiculous, because then we need drugs, we need reassuring, we need many things. We are called upon to do big things, and not small things, not trivial things, but big things in love. And the humble people make big things. The humble people, like the Virgin Mary, these people are able to accomplish big things. St. Francis, someone said, asked St. Francis, why are you asking to be forgiven? You are the best, the best person. So the commitment to do big things, to make big things in a world of important people who unfortunately cultivate addictions to become protagonists, the culture of power, then the digital destruction. But all of these things, those who believe they are so great, then experience nihilism, destruction, and the fall as well. Think about all the depression, widespread depressions, where you have performance. If you're not able to perform, you get depressed. So I think that all of us should carry out big things. As Madeleine Delbrêl, we should all have a revolutionary kind of mercy. She said something very beautiful. We should not wait to read on the newspapers that there is someone suffering. We should be as revolutionaries as the mother, and she meant the church, who perfectly knows about the sufferings of the world. Because the church is a mother. The church is like the mother. The suffering of the world cannot make us feel good. It's something which calls upon us to do big things, and at the same time being good-spirited, in a good mood, joyful, happy, with a good sense of humor, ironical. Just as those who do knock themselves too seriously and who are self-ironical. They are ready to accept jokes and to laugh about themselves. So I would like to read something that Pope Francis said at the end of the synod. This is a great perspective of the spirituality and social aspects. The sacrament on the altar and the service to the other people. Pope Francis wrote, there's a poetry by Madeleine Delbrêl who said, above all, do not be rigid. Rigidity is a sin which sometimes get into the hearts of the clergy and the consecrated men and women. And she said, for I think that you may have had enough of people who always speak of serving you with the look of a leader, of encountering you with the air of a professor, of approaching you with sporting regulations, of loving you as one loves in an aged marriage. I think that we are so self-centered that we do not make even this effort. Let us live our lives, not as a game of chess where everything is calculated, not as a game with everything is difficult, not as a theorem that breaks our minds, but like an endless party. Like an endless party where your meeting is renewed, like a ball, like a dance, in the arms of your grace, in the universal music of love. So they helped us believe in all this, and let's try to sing all this in this world which is so full of suffering. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Io mi permetto.
Let me once again say thank you to all our guest speakers. On one side, Sister Clare reminded us that we are made for great things, and Sister Madeleine told us that these great things can be used at the moonlight bar, that is, going into the world, and that's really the task we were entrusted with by the Pope yesterday when he told us, go out and meet everybody. So thank you all once again. You're all invited to visit the exhibitions that are here at the meeting. And one last point, please remember that the meeting is a place building beauty, hope, encounters, and dialogue, and it needs support. The meeting was my job place for 10 years, And so with great affection and great strength, I invite you all to contribute and to support this great reality. Follow the red heart signs that you'll find throughout the fair trade centers as a sign of gratitude for the beauty that we are all experiencing these days. Thank you all and have a great day.
Questo è un luogo che genera dialogo,
Qualcuno che si impegna, che si batte.
che approfondisce la conoscenza e sostiene la fiducia. È un crocevia dove si incontra chi desidera il vero, il bello, il giusto e il bene. È una testimonianza di speranza nel cuore ferito del presente. E tutto questo
Proporre con la propria vita.
esiste anche grazie a te.
In mezzo al rumore serve qualcosa che duri.
El Papa León XIV.
Storie vere. Incontri che cambiano la vita. Persone che costruiscono. Uno sguardo originale su ciò che accade. Tutto questo è Tracce. Ora anche in una nuova versione digitale. Per raccontare sempre più storie di gente che vive. Tracce, la rivista internazionale di Comunione e Liberazione.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il programma Easy Token Collection, per accumulare punti da trasformare in premi. Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo.
Consorzio La Cascina. Ristorazione, global service, costruzioni, servizi alla persona. Promuoviamo l'impresa mutualistica e il benessere della comunità. I numeri di una grande realtà. Oltre 650 milioni di fatturato, più di 16.000 lavoratori. Vivenda. Ristorazione per mense scolastiche, ospedali, aziende e comunità. Global Service. La Cascina Costruzioni. Realizziamo come impresa o general contractor infrastrutture e grandi opere edilizie. Medi Hospice. Assistenza, accoglienza, cura. Da sempre al fianco dei più fragili. Consorzio La Cascina. Cuore da cooperativa, testa da impresa.
In mezzo al rumore serve qualcosa che duri.
El Papa León XIV.
Storie vere. Incontri che cambiano la vita. Persone che costruiscono. Uno sguardo originale su ciò che accade. Tutto questo è Tracce. Ora anche in una nuova versione digitale. Per raccontare sempre più storie di gente che vive. Tracce, la rivista internazionale di Comunione e Liberazione.
È bello avere quello che ti serve quando ti serve. Come il programma Easy Token Collection, per accumulare punti da trasformare in premi. Easy Bank, la banca digitale di Intesa San Paolo.
Consorzio La Cascina. Ristorazione, global service, costruzioni, servizi alla persona. Promuoviamo l'impresa mutualistica e il benessere della comunità. I numeri di una grande realtà. Oltre 650 milioni di fatturato, più di 16.000 lavoratori. Vivenda. Ristorazione per mense scolastiche, ospedali, aziende e comunità. Global Service. La Cascina Costruzioni. Realizziamo come impresa o general contractor infrastrutture e grandi opere edilizie. Medi Hospice. Assistenza, accoglienza, cura. Da sempre al fianco dei più fragili. Consorzio La Cascina. Cuore da cooperativa, testa da impresa.